Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall here. Well, our last Bible study for Core 52, week 51. You probably won't have any Bible studies on the week of Christmas. Grit. Probably took some grit if you made it this far in Core 52. If you've done all 51 chapters to this point, you have demonstrated grit. Who is someone that you know whose story is full of grit? And it has inspired you, that you look to that person as an inspiration because of their grit. And then before we dig into Nehemiah, just keep you talking, a little icebreaker question number 2. What is the toughest thing that you have ever accomplished in your life? What was that experience like? What was a time in your life that you went through something difficult or a great challenge and grit got you through, and what was that like? And then, how would you define grit? What do you think about it? Talk about that as a group. Just come up with a working definition. Well, Nehemiah. We're just going to look at the first 6 chapters, and we're going to look at them from almost a 5,000-foot view. But who was Nehemiah? And what is your impression of him? What is your thoughts about him as a leader? What is your thoughts about him as a man of God? And then, in chapter 1, what cost was Nehemiah willing to pay to see that these walls started to be repaired? And then, in what ways, specifically in chapter 1, in what ways did Nehemiah back up his faith by being prepared for a moment of opportunity? What are some ways that we can back up our faith like Nehemiah did? And then chapter 2. How did Nehemiah deal with his enemies' ridicule in the 2nd chapter? Nehemiah handled so much of this challenge with prayer. How did he pray? What did he pray for? And are there things that you think that we could learn or that we could mimic from Nehemiah's prayers that would be helpful for our prayer life? Chapter 4. How did the ridicule affect the work on the wall in chapter 4? And what does that say about the grit of the people? Not just Nehemiah's grit, but the grit of the people. And then chapter 5. In chapter 5, the problems come from Nehemiah's own people. They're complaining. What is more difficult for you to handle? Is it more difficult for you to handle outside attacks? Is it more difficult for you to handle actual threats? Nehemiah handled that. Or is it more difficult for you to handle inside complaints? Family, friends that are close to you that are complaining. Which for you requires more grit? Well, chapter 5, the end tells us that they finished the walls in 52 ways, which is amazing. Could be even argued that it was miraculous. What have you had to personally endure that took a lot longer than 52 days? Or it is maybe still going on and it's taken a lot longer than less than 2 months? Well, which of the 5 steps, Mark gave us these 5 steps of gaining grit. He said, get over yourself, cultivate optimism, recognize the consequences, delayed gratification, and be accountable. Which of these 5 do you think that you need to work on the most? Which one of these 5 do you think that right now you need to implement in your life? And then our application is along those lines. You're supposed to write a personal action plan for gaining grit. Have you done that? Have you put these in order of which is first, which is second, which is the highest priority, which is the second highest priority? It's time to get to work. Well, I hope that you have a great group. I hope that you have a Merry Christmas, and I hope that you will come to one of our Christmas services. We'll have a service on Christmas Eve at 7 o'clock. We'll have a service on Christmas Eve at 7 o'clock, and we'll have a service on Christmas Day at 10 a.m. All those services will be the same. They'll have candlelights and kids, and hope that you'll come to one. God bless.